So today we're going to continue talking about inequalities. We'll actually be solving inequalities and not just graphing them. So first let's start with our vocab. An inequality. An inequality is a mathematical sentence that contains one of these symbols down here. So we have the less than, the greater than symbol, the less than or equal to, the greater than or equal to, so any number that makes the inequality 2 is a solution to the inequality. So it's like the answer to the inequality. But an inequality may have multiple solutions. So it could have multiple answers that could make the inequality true. So, how to read an inequality. We talked about this last class, but let's review a little bit. And we need to remember we always start with that variable first. Always start with that first. So, our variable is f. And we need to think about what side of our inequality sign is touching our f. So, the small side or the little side, so it'll be less than. F is less than. And we have that line underneath, so it's less than or equal to -5. The next one we have t is less than 7.25. We start with that variable every time, so t, the small side of our sign is touching our variable, so less than, little side less than 7.25. Next, we're always starting with that variable first, so b, we're looking at what side of our inequality sign is touching our variable, and it is the little side or the less than side. So b is less than 6. And our last one, again, we're starting with that variable, so we're thinking about m, and we're thinking which side of our sign is touching it, the little side or the big side, the greater side. And the big side is, so m is greater than, and it has that line underneath, so it's greater than or equal to 2. Okay, now looking at the bottom of your paper, we are going to talk about, is it a solution or not? So a number is a solution to an inequality if it makes the inequality true. So a number is a solution to the inequality if it makes the inequality true. And what that means is if we plug in a number, is the solution true? So we're going to plug in -7 for f. So we have -7 is less than or equal to -5. It's a solution if this is true. Is -7 smaller or equal to -5? Yes, it is. So yes, this would be a solution. Looking at the next one, we have, is 10 a solution to t is less than 7.25? Well, let's plug in 10. So 10 is less than 7.25. Is 10 smaller than 7? No, so this would not be a solution. It's not a true statement. Is -3 a solution to 6 is greater than b? So let's plug it in. 6 is greater than -3. Is 6 bigger than -3? Yes, it is. So this is a true solution. And then our last one, is 2 a solution to 2 is less than or equal to m? Well, let's plug it in. Oops. So we're plugging in 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 2? Well, it's not less than, but it has this line underneath that says equal to, and 2 is equal to 2, so yes, this is a solution. Turning to your next page, we're going to solve some one-step inequalities. So looking at number 1, I'm drawing a line down our inequality sign, and I'm looking to see which side I'm starting on. So I'm looking for that variable, and our variable's on the left, so we'll be starting on this side. And we always then look for our constant, but this does not have a constant, it only has a coefficient, so we are going to see what 12 and x are doing, and 12 and x are multiplying, so we need to divide both sides by 12, because that's the number we want to get rid of. Cross out what we used, bring down what we have left, so we have x is less than 48 divided by 12, and 48 divided by 12 is 4. So we have x is less than 4. So we could write it out like we did last time when x is looking at what side of the symbol is touching the little side. So x is less than 4. And that tells us which side we're going to write our letter, an L or a G. So it's a less than, so we're going to write our L. So our arrow is going to go towards that L. And now we need to make our number line. So we start at 4. 5, and 3, looking at our sign to decide our circle, and since it's not equal to, it's not like a closed fist like we talked about protesting. Whenever people have their closed fist, they're saying we're equal, we're equal, we're equal at a protest, right? But this doesn't have a closed fist, it has an open fist. So we have an open circle because it's not equal. And we're going towards that L, which is why we wrote it. So any number going this direction would make this inequality true. So 3 is less than 4, that's true. 2 is less than 4, that would be true. So moving on to our next one, number 2, I'm going to draw my line down my inequality sign. And I'm looking for the side with the variable, so we're starting on this side. Now we're constantly looking for that constant first. So our constant is -3 or -3, so the opposite would be +3 on both sides. Cross out what I used, bring down what I have left, so I have x is greater than 12 plus 3, which is 15. So that is our inequality. Now we need to make our number line. So looking back at our inequality, we have x, and the bigger side of our inequality sign is touching that x. So we have a bigger or a greater, so I'm going to write a G on my number line. So I know that my arrow is going to go this way. And I'm starting on 15, and I have just a greater than sign. So I'm going to have an open circle, and it's going towards that G. So any number on this side of our arrow is going to be true if we plug it into our inequality. So 16 is greater than 15. 17 is greater than 15. All of those numbers that are bigger than 15 will make this inequality true. Okay, so looking at number 3, draw your, whoa, that's a bad line. Draw your line down your inequality sign. And we're looking at what side we're starting on, and that's the right side this time because that's our side with our variable. And we constantly need to look for that constant first, so we have +3, and the opposite would be -3 on both sides. Cross out what we use, bring down what we have, so we have G, our greater than sign, and 16 minus 3 would be 13. So looking at our inequality, we need to see what part of our inequality sign is touching our variable, and that's this little side. So we're going to have an L on our number line. Make your number line, so 13, 14, 12. And since we have just a less than sign, not a less than or equal to sign, we're going to have an open circle, and we're going towards that L we drew on our number line. Okay, looking at number 4. On number 4, I want you to scribble out that negative sign in front of the 3. It just should be 3x is less than or equal to 18. So first thing we do is look for our side with the variable. So we're starting on the left side, and then we constantly look for that constant first, but we don't have a constant this time, so we need to start with our coefficient. So we have 3 and x, and 3 and x are being multiplied, so the opposite of multiplication would be division. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. Cross out what we used, bring down what we have left. So we have x is less than or equal to 18 divided by 3, and that'd be 6. So our solution is x is less than or equal to 6. So looking at our variable, we need to see which side of our inequality is touching it, the little side or the big side. And the little side is, so I'm going to draw an L next to my number line. So making your number lines real quick. We have less than or equal to, and remember, if we're saying we're equal at a protest, we have that closed fist, so we're going to have a closed fist or a closed circle on our number line. And we're going to that L that we drew. So any of these numbers that we drew our arrow on are our x values. So we could say 5 is less than or equal to 6, 4 is less than or equal to 6. They're all a solution to our inequality. Okay, looking at the bottom of the page, we always start on the side with our variable, and then we look for our constant. But we don't have a constant, so we're just looking at our coefficient. So 2p. 2 and p are being multiplied. The only way to get, 2 and p are being multiplied. The opposite of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide both sides by 2, because that's that number we want to get rid of. Cross out what we used, bring down what we have left. So 16 divided by 2 would be 8. We have 8 is greater than or equal to p. So now on our number line, we want to think what part of our inequality sign is touching our variable, and that's the small side or the little side. So we're going to write an L on our number line. And now we can make it. So we have 8, 9, and 7. We have 8 is greater than or equal to. If we're saying we're equal, we have a closed circle or a closed fist. So we're going to have a closed circle, and we're going towards that L we drew on our number line for less than. So any of these numbers that are arrows over on our number line can work for a solution as our inequality. So 8 is greater than or equal to 7, 8 is greater than or equal to 6. Those are all true. Okay, last one, looking at number 6. So we always start on the side with our variable, and then we constantly look for that constant first, but we don't have a constant, so we're just looking at the coefficient. So we have 1/2 x, and 1 and 2 are being divided, and the opposite of division is multiplication. So we're going to be multiplying both sides of our equation by the fraction. And remember, when we have fractions, we have to flip them. So we're going to be multiplying by 2 over 1 on both sides. Cross out what we used, bring down what we have left. So we have x is greater than or equal to, and remember this 20 is technically over 1. So we have 20 times 2, which would be 40. And 1 times 1, because we multiply our numerators and then our denominators, and 1 times 1 would just be 1. So it would be 40 over 1, but we don't need to write the 1 because it's always there. We don't need it, right? So we have x is greater than or equal to 40. So now we need to decide, are we going to write an L or a G on our number line? So looking at our variable, our x, the bigger side or the greater side of our inequality sign is touching our variable, so we're going to write a G. Now we can make our number line. So we have 40, 41, 39, and now we need to decide our circle. So we have greater than or equal to, so we're equal, we have to have a closed fist or a closed circle, and we are pointing our arrow towards that G we drew next to our number line. So any of these numbers on our arrow, and they can all make this inequality true. So x is greater than or equal to 2, so any number x is greater than or equal to 40, so any number bigger than 40 makes this true. So 41 is greater than or equal to 40, that's true. Now there's an important thing down here at the bottom of your notes I want to talk about, is when you multiply or divide by a negative number to solve an inequality, you have to flip the sign. So put big stars next to this, you need to remember it. When you multiply or divide a negative number to solve an inequality, you have to flip the inequality sign. So you have to flip these signs. So if it was this way, you'd have to flip it this way. If we had a equal to sign, we'd have to flip it this way if we were multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So on the next page, we just have a little bit of review that you can read through if you ever forget how to solve an inequality. It's just like equations. We're doing the opposite of what we're doing in our equation. So here are a few more examples. So we are starting on the side with our variable, which is this side. So we constantly look for that constant first. So we have minus 6. The opposite would be plus 6 on both sides. Cross out what we used, bringing down what we have. So we have y is less than or equal to 12 plus 6, which is 18. We need to decide if we're going to write an L or a G. So we have our variable, and the little side of our inequality sign is touching our variable, so we're going to write an L. Now we can make our number line. So we have 18, 19, and 17. We decide if we have an open or a closed circle. We have that line underneath, so we have a closed circle, and our arrow is going towards that L. I want you to go ahead and look at number 2. So before I let you guys do some of these problems on your own, I want you to look at number 2 and remember we have r minus -2 is greater than -5. We have a minus and a negative sign. If we have a minus and a negative sign, we have to do keep, change, or we have to make it into a plus sign. So we have r plus 2 is greater than -5. I want you to go ahead and do 2, 3, and 4 on your own. When you're ready to check your answers, go ahead and hit play. Please pause the video. Okay, so go ahead and check your answers. Please make sure if you got any of these wrong, you guys raise your hand so I can come and talk to you about why you got it wrong.